Hello, everybody. This is Vincent. Vincent is back to share his story about his journey out of the Watchtower Society, out of Jehovah's Witnesses. And, well, you probably noticed that my background is different. Yes, I'm recording this in a different place. Somebody had mentioned that large window I had in the background. It was just too bright. So I thought, what a great idea. I need to change it up a bit. So here I am. Well, first things first, you seen the Rebel necklace? That's a lion's tooth, by the way, and I think it's cool. So, yeah, I really like it. I got that from in Kenya, so I thought that was nice. And, of course, we have to talk about the t-shirt. I don't know if you noticed that this shirt is actually green. Remember my black one? I had a darker shirt with the little cross. There you go. It's that little cross again. Well, this one's a green one. Well, and, there's a story behind these t-shirts, by the way. My son, he ordered the darker t-shirt with the little cross, and when he came in my house with that on, I thought, man, that is so cool. I want one. So I ordered one. When I received it, I liked it so much, I ordered a green one, I ordered a gray one, and then I thought, this darker shirt over here, I don't want it to wear out. So I thought, I better order another one just to make sure I have two. Well, I ordered another one, and they accidentally sent me two more. So I have now three of the darker ones. I have a green one, I have a gray one. Well, I liked those shirts so much that I ordered another black shirt from another company with a cross similar to this, except it's larger. And I made a video with that on. So if it looks like I have a uniform for this XJW channel, well, maybe I do. I can't get tired of these shirts. So if I am wearing the same thing, well, that's the story behind it. I don't have body odor, and I do wear different things. But anyway, that's that story. Let's get to what we want to talk about. If you didn't watch the last video, you really need to watch the last video. Then you'll know what's going on in this video. I had already talked to the elders at the Kingdom Hall about everything that I have discovered, and there was no help from them. But they thought they would help me by having two other elders meet with me in a car at night somewhere, and we had our discussions there. And as you know from my last video, not only did they not bring me any relief, but they were confused themselves. They were lost. They said they would do research in this and get back to me. They never did. So I knew that was the end. I knew I was never going back to Jehovah's Witnesses. However, what happened next was that I went back home at some point in time. I can't remember how long it was after this, but at home, I looked at my wife at that time, my ex today, and said, I'm not going to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses anymore. I'll take you to the meetings, I'll support you, but I am not a Jehovah's Witness. So I agreed to take her to the meeting. And I thought I could handle, I wasn't just going to take her to the meeting, drop her off. I was actually going to go in, sit there, and, and that's it. Well, that's what I did. Because you got to remember, at this point, I never actually told those elders, I don't want to be a witness. And I never told anybody else about this either. So it was a Sunday. I took her to the meeting, and I went inside. And I will admit, it was that last minute that I began to seek out, maybe there is a lifeline here somewhere. Maybe somebody can offer me just a flash of light, a flash of hope, and pull me back to the Watchtower Society. However, it wasn't going to be that easy, because when I went into that Kingdom Hall knowing what I knew, those movies where somebody's on drugs and their vision is like all over the place and, they can't think straight? My experience in going back, because I was in such a daze, I was so indoctrinated, and now my life was falling apart. When I went back in the Kingdom Hall, it was very similar to that. I went in, I would hear people talking, but it just, it didn't make sense anymore. I couldn't really hear individual voices, and I was just wandering around the Kingdom Hall, and that's where I'm like, I am in a complete daze. I am I'm out of my mind here. And so I'm going to like this ministerial servant here who once was an elder. I am talking to this older person over here. And I can't remember everything I said, but I was talking in code. I mean, like I would go to one of the brothers there and say, you know, I found this in the watch. I read this in the Watchtower, and I read that in the Watchtower, and I just don't understand it. I mean, I was talking in such a code that you really didn't know what I was thinking, but you knew I wanted some kind of a solution to whatever problem I had, and that person, like I said, I can't remember the exact words, but basically, he comforted me by saying a couple of sentences or two, and that was pretty much it. And then I did the same thing with another older man who was once an elder years ago. Same thing. And they just look at you like, okay, I didn't even hear what you just told me. That kind of a look. And then there was this elder that had dealt with me, and he said, so how are you doing, Brother Gomez? And I'm like, all right. I said, but it still doesn't solve the problem I have with us worshiping Jesus in the 40s. And he says, well, I said, I haven't talked to anybody about it, and he said, well, that's really good that you haven't talked to anybody about it. And that was like another nail in the coffin. It's like, I'm thinking to myself, not only are you not answering the question and explaining this well, but now you have proven to me that you want to keep your eyes closed as well. And some people might say, they are brainwashed, they're under mind control. That's true. But something, even when I was in, I needed explanations for things. Not because I wanted to leave the Watchtower, but if somebody came to me with that kind of information, I would have looked into it so I could prove them wrong. I mean, that's the kind of witness I was. I mean, I didn't want any of these people talking bad about the Watchtower. So that's what I would do. But that's not the way these guys think, So that was the end. I mean, I was really hurting. And this was on a Sunday, so it was the Watchtower study. And what I'm going to tell you next, and I've repeated it over and over, doesn't mean I was becoming a Christian or thinking anything like that. I was trying to find comfort, and the only comfort I could possibly have at that time was the Bible. So what happened was the Watchtower Tower study, and I can't remember the subject, but anyway, towards the final paragraph, it had this scripture in it. And I'm going to read it right from the New World Translation. I am going to wear my glasses, by the way. I was able to see the camera better in this room, so I didn't wear my glasses. But to read, I actually have to wear my glasses. It says, although the fig tree itself may not blossom, and there may be no yield on the vines, the work of the olive tree may actually turn out a failure, and the terraces themselves may actually produce no food. The flock may actually be severed from the pen, and there may be no herd in the enclosures. Yet, as for me, I will exult in Jehovah himself. I will be joyful in the God of my salvation. So that was the scripture that was in the Watchtower study that day. And the question in the Watchtower was connected with that verse. So in my state of mind these days, I raised my hand and I quoted from the scripture. And here's basically what I said. And this goes back to the idea that I was trying to speak code to these people. I had the Watchtower Society in mind when I read this verse. And here's what I said. A farmer, when he plants something, you and everybody else, we expect results. We expect good results. No, we don't just expect it. We demand it. I mean, you plant corn, you plant peas, whatever. You demand that you get those things in return. And I was saying how sometimes, though, men fail and we do not get what should, happen. We don't get what was planted or what they claimed to have planted. And I said, but regardless of what happens, we need to put our trust in God and exalt in Jehovah. So that was my comment that day, or something close to that. And it comforted me to a tiny extent, because I was looking for anything that could save me at the time. So now I left the Kingdom Hall, and now that was the nail in the coffin. I was no longer going to even try to get back to any extent to that organization. Well, after that, and first of all, I just want to say that when I went into that Kingdom Hall, it was very strange to me because I was in such a daze, However, the next meeting really was the clincher for me. I took my wife to the Kingdom Hall, and I went in the Kingdom Hall, and I'm going to tell you that that Kingdom Hall took on the most ominous look, because just in that short week of time, I started rereading about mind control and things like that. I had a clear mind actually at that point, because I had already decided I am not even going to try to convince myself to go back at all. So when I went in, it looked very scary to me, because we always say witnesses are nice and they're good people, and that might technically be true, but they have the hive mind of the Watchtower Society. So you go in there, and there is a plastic characteristic to these people. People are smiling and they're talking, and there's just something off about this place. And then when the meeting started, how they have question answers and all of this. Well, of course, and that's when I began to really look at those things differently. It's like you can see the mind control, people just raising their hand, repeating what's in the paragraph. And then, as an elder, I remember always telling this audience, stick to the paragraph, stick to the paragraph. Why do you want to stick to the paragraph? Because it's all about mind control. I mean, these people are expressing themselves only the way the Watchtower has it written there. They don't have a mind of their own, and it was pretty creepy. And then, of course, I started having all those memories of everything that I researched, the darkness of the Watchtower, and I literally started having a panic attack at that moment. So that night, I left the Kingdom Hall before it was over, and I went into my van, and I locked the doors. I didn't feel safe in that Kingdom Hall. I was even creeped out with just being, on the outside of that building. And I remember in a blog one time, after I left, I told people that story that I just told you about my fear of that Kingdom Hall, and somebody made the comment back to me like, oh, you're just exaggerating. Not true whatsoever. Remember what I told you, how, if you're a true believer, you thought the lurking place of demons was in Christendom, and you really believed that. Well, now you're finding out that this church, the Kingdom Hall, is the same as all those churches. So now you're associating the two, and this place becomes very scary. Well, that night, I stayed in my van till the meeting was over. And then when the meeting was over, I got out of the van, and I forgot what I was doing, but I was out in the parking lot. And one of those elders that spoke with me one night, the main guy, he came out and he wanted to talk to me. And I started talking to him, and I can't remember what I said, but I know what I said. I quoted the scripture where Jesus said, call no one your leader, for Christ is your leader. I read that verse like twice to him, and I said, this is what it says. We don't listen to men. We don't listen to the Watchtower. We listen to Christ. He is our leader. And what he did was, for Jehovah's Witnesses to do this, it's almost like an exorcism. He put his hand on my shoulder and he said a prayer out loud in the parking lot, trying to save me. That's when things, once again, that's when I thought, okay, this is really weird and I need to go home. So I went home that night, and never again was I ever found in a Kingdom Hall. And I told my wife at that time that I can't do this anymore. You're just going to have to go to that Kingdom Hall by yourself, because I want nothing to do with that organization at all. I'm done. And so that was the end. That's how I left the Watchtower Society. Now, what happened after that? Well, I just wanted to take it to that point at this time, because it's like a movie. That is like the climax. We're like in phase 1, And you know how the first movie is always better than the second and the third. Well, we're in the first movie, and that's how this journey ended at this point. You know, as far as my determination never to go back to the Watchtower Society. And what followed after that is a different story. It may not seem as exciting, but there are things to it. Yeah, later on I disassociated myself. I did have some interactions with elders, and we will talk about that as well. But we're going to stop there at this time, and I may not talk about the next part of my journey yet, because I think there's some other things I want to talk about first. Because I talked about in the past, we had mentioned, why did I leave Jehovah's Witnesses? And we talked about how things, build up in the mind and on that shelf and it breaks. You reach your breaking point. I want to talk about some of those things for a little while. And that all ties in with me being a follower of Christ today. And I think you will be able to relate to all of these things, and you'll be able to see things the way I've seen them. So anyway, we'll talk about those things later, and make sure you watch for your notification, and we'll see you at the next video.